from content formula. Okay. Thank you, Russell. Yes, so I'm John Scott. I'm the User Experience or UX Director at Content Formula, and we're the UK partner for Wisdom. Now, I was browsing through the App Store on my iPhone the other day, and I came across a very interesting app. It's called Tornado Guard. And basically, it alerts you when there's a tornado nearby. Now, admittedly, there aren't many tornadoes in southwest London, but it did pique my interest because it was the first example of one of these kind of disaster predictor or alerter apps that I'd seen. So I had a look, and it had 4 out of 5 stars average rating, based on 4 reviews, and I had a look at that. So the first review, 5 stars. Amazing graphics, lots of choices for alert tones. And then the second review, 5 stars again. Runs like a dream, no crashes. And then the third review, 5 stars. Very slick interface, nice animations. And then the fourth review, 1 star. Okay. Did not warn me about tornadoes. So this highlights a problem with average review scores, of course, but also it highlights something else important about user experience. The first reviews were focused on something that we call surface delight. Now, surface delight is delightful user experience, but it's in very sort of localized, small areas of the overall experience. But it's sort of not very holistic, really. And you can achieve these in areas, but the underlying product might be quite bad. There are ways to deliver surface delight, and some of the common ones or key ones are these. So first of all is like impressive graphics or use of photography. You see many websites take this approach now. This is Airbnb, a sort of accommodation booking service, if you've ever seen it before. They use very enticing, sort of exotic photography of locations to sort of tempt you. But also they use photography that depicts sort of friends or family members having fun together, having a sort of shared experience that creates an emotional sort of reaction in the audience. Now, admittedly, it's a bit more difficult to do this sort of thing on the digital workplace. Imagery is typically a bit harder to come by and that sort of thing, but you can do it. Here's a customer that we work with, and we implemented a sort of interactive header on their digital workplace homepage that used initially their branding imagery that they had available from marketing. But you could interact with the banner, and you could click it, and it would sort of come down. You'd see the full image, and we actually used it to communicate information about the products that they made. In this case, it's orthopedics, so knees, hips, elbows, that sort of thing, and also highlight customer stories or testimonies and that sort of thing. And also, we used it to drive a competition where employees could actually submit their own photos that also sort of conveyed the brand messaging of never stop moving, it was the slogan. And they could do that through the intranet. So that ended up in competition winners having their own photos featured in the intranet header. So we were able to make use of photography in that way to add some surface delight like that. Another example of surface delight, it could be achieved through tasteful, let's say, animation. So this is a website called Roll Park. It's basically a parking solution, temporary parking solution. And they use animation really nicely to actually sort of convey or explain how the system works by breaking apart the layers and explaining what each one does and how it technically works, that sort of thing. So that's something. And then also down the bottom of the page they have some more standard sort of statistics and infographic that they add animation to. It doesn't really aid the sort of explanation in this case, but it just adds a nice sort of, a finishing touch to the whole experience. Now, of course, you can also achieve this sort of thing on your digital workplace because you can use subtle animation in sort of appropriate areas. And there's an example here for a client where they were publicising a fundraising campaign called Better World Walk that involved a big sponsored walk. So we added some fun here with an animation to kind of explain the process and how that would work. Another example of surface delight and how you can weave that in is through something called microcopy. So microcopy is what you see here. Basically, this is a kind of page 404, page not found message on Mailchimp.com, an email marketing tool, and they use kind of fun, sort of humorous copy to explain that you've not found, they've not found what you're looking for, and even a kind of accompanying image, sort of cartoon, to make things a bit more sort of human and less system-like. And they do it also when you're signing up. If you've chosen a username that actually someone else has already chosen, the error message is this. So it kind of like injects a bit of humour and fun, again increasing the sort of humanity of the system, and sort of again creating more of a sort of emotional connection with the audience. So the problem with surface delight is that it can come across as a bit gimmicky and a bit sort of like tasteless if it's laid on top of a product that is actually quite bad underneath. And so that's where there's an area of user experience that's more important than surface delight, and that is deep delight. And deep delight is a much more sort of fundamental, holistic delight that comes from using a system or a digital workplace where all of the user needs are met, not just a few in a few different small areas. And like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's actually a hierarchy of needs for users of the digital workplace, and it looks like this. So first of all, we start with the functional layer. The system or the digital workplace must do something that the organisation wants it to do. It must have a function, it must have a purpose, it must do something. Then we have reliable, so it must be available the majority of the time. It can't be often crashing or down. That's just not acceptable. So we need to layer in that part of the experience too. And then once those two have been achieved, it can begin to be usable or user-friendly. Now I would say that probably most digital workplaces or intranets that we come across are operating in this level now. They've kind of conquered the bottom two and they're in this area. But really once you've achieved usability, you can then go to the peak, which is pleasurable or delightful in the case of today. And that's really where you're adding the additional value and the additional experiences that make the whole experience feel delightful. So to explore now how we achieve deep delight, we're going to go to an unusual source of inspiration, Hollywood. Now, can anyone name this TV show from the screen grab here? Does anyone know what this is? It's quite a hard one. Columbo, yes, that's right. So this is Columbo. This is Lieutenant Columbo. And Columbo is basically the only LA cop who never uses a gun. He just has a pad and a pencil. But he solves the murders that he's involved in, that he's assigned to investigate, through his incredible interview technique. So he goes around and he talks to suspects and the victims' sort of relations and that sort of thing, and he asks all sorts of questions. He sort of disarms them initially with his charm and his bumbling sort of persona. He comes across as very non-threatening, and they open up to him, they tell him all sorts of things. And he starts to build a picture of everything from the sort of motivations of people around the victim to the sequence of events that led up to the murder, and eventually he builds up such a broad picture of all the knowledge necessary that there is this kind of the answer just comes to him, bam, he just gets the answer, he sees, okay, that's the murderer, this is how he did it, and he comes up with a solution. Now, if Columbo was a UX researcher, he probably would be the ultimate UX researcher, probably the best in the world, because so much of it is about understanding your users, interviewing them, understanding their motivations, their needs, their kind of barriers they face, how to overcome them, and all sorts of things like that. And it's only when you understand these things about users that you can actually set the right course initially to end up at user experience, a delightful user experience. You have to set your course initially in the right direction, and the user research is vital. Doing that effectively, comprehensively is vital in setting that course. And when you're doing it, you can capture things like processes that people follow with process flows like this, and look for opportunities to improve processes. but also you can capture snapshots of your audience members in a series of personas like this. And these kind of serve as reminders as you continue to develop the digital workspace as to what good looks like to these people, what are their main concerns when you're building the digital workplace, or indeed evolving it over time. Now, another important one is symbolised by this movie. Can anyone identify the movie from this? Jurassic Park, exactly, yes. So after the spectacular failure of the first Jurassic Park, its creator, John Hammond, went back to the drawing board and started plans for his second park. And when he told Ian Malcolm about it, who was a guest in the first park, played by Jeff Goldblum, he said, "Don't worry, we won't make the same mistakes again." And Jeff Goldblum, Ian Malcolm says, no, you're making all new ones. So the message here for the digital workplace is, don't make the same mistakes again. You will see so many companies fall into the trap of making the same mistakes over and over again. And some chief offenders here include things like search, just leaving it out of the box, not thinking about what to do with it, to configure it, to make it more useful for users. If you've ever done any usability testing sessions to test search, you probably have noticed that the average user is a bad searcher. They're really not very good at it. They kind of put in one-word search terms that are very generic, and they're looking for something very specific, and they expect to find it at the top of the results, and it just doesn't work like that. And a lot needs to be done to improve the experience for those users. One example would be to monitor what people are searching for, pick out those common terms, and create manually suggested search results for those terms. It's something called promoted results. It's very easy to set up and do, not very technical, and that can dramatically improve the experience for searches of common terms. You may have heard about that feature. Then there's governance and continuous improvement. Lots of companies have great intentions here when they kind of initially launch their new digital workplace, but that quickly sort of, the enthusiasm dampens very quickly. Often the vision holder of the project leaves the company, and with it goes all of the motivation and interest in maintaining this. And it's going to sound like a sales pitch, but I think one really concrete and good way to help continue interest in driving value in the digital workplace ongoing is to involve a consultancy. An outside consultancy will make damn sure that they continue it, because it's going to mean continuous business for them, and they'll be able to help you with adding value with new projects and enhancements. Then we have silly names, so calling things silly names, so insisting on branding everything. Instead of having policies, having the BRK Bible, and things like that. And it's basically just harmful to the user experience, because somebody who walked in the business yesterday, or even probably a few months ago, will look at that and not have a clue what that is. So call things what they actually are, and that you'll stop making that mistake. And then the last one here, probably quite surprising from somebody from a UX and graphic design background, obsessing over look and feel. I think you should make sure that you've got a professional look and feel in your digital workplace, but the amount of attention it gets in a typical company is a bit insane, really, compared to some other stuff that should get a lot more attention, or at least equal attention. You often get lots of senior people involved in iterating the design and changing colours and fonts and all sorts of things like that. And really, just leave it to the professional. They'll come up with something that works from a user perspective, and just sort of go with that. Not worry too much about it. So yes, like Jurassic Park, don't make the same mistakes again. But unlike Jurassic Park, you can afford to make new mistakes, and you should do that regularly, because by by trying new things and making mistakes here and there, but actually getting feedback and tweaking them and adjusting the sort of direction of them, you will naturally evolve the digital workplace incrementally to make it better and better and better and better. And users will notice this. They will see that things change gradually for the better, and they will appreciate that, and it will increase user trust in your digital workplace. They won't think, oh, it doesn't work, and I'm going to have to wait 3 years for the next big bang update. So yes, as Thomas Edison said, I've not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work. And that should be your mantra. Okay, next movie, anyone know this one? Truman Show, yes, that's right. So This is Jim Carrey as Truman Show. And basically he was born into a TV show. He was the only one in the sort of world he lived in that didn't know it was a TV show. Everyone around him was an actor. The world he lived in was an elaborate set created for the purpose of this show. But as he grew older, he began to notice that things weren't quite right. You know, he would see the same people in the same spot every day in the same clothes saying the same things. It was all very choreographed. And he thought, no, this is all very weird. And it became a nightmare for Truman that he needed to escape from. But for your digital workplace users, this would be like a nirvana. You know, if the whole digital workplace seemed to be oriented around you and knew everything that you were going to do or wanted to do and provided the kind of tools and means to do it and interfered and led you along the right path, it would be a fantastic experience. So you need to make your digital workplace like the Truman Show for your users, basically. And there are some ways that you can do this, that primarily among them is personalisation or targeting of content and features based on the roles that people sit within or the location and so on. And there are some good features in Wisdom that have just recently been updated actually that allow you to do this effectively. But actually to make it really work, to make it really delightful, there's also a lot of work and coordination that needs to happen behind the scenes in terms of deciding what content needs to be served to whom and when. And so here's an example from a university project that we worked on in the UK, where the menu system is delivering different links, completely different links, depending on if I'm a student in my first year or second year or third year or so on, or master's, but also depending on what time of year it is. So if I'm a first year student just starting and it's my first few weeks, then I see links to registration or enrolment here. So that's all being coordinated behind the scenes, but I see that at the right time. And that really, again, kind of makes it feel like, oh, this is really talking to me in my current sort of status as a user. Okay, next movie. Anyone know this one? Sorry? Batman, The Dark Knight. So this is the Joker from The Dark Knight. Yes, exactly. And one of the things that the Joker says to Batman at one point is, why so serious? And that's a good question when it comes to the digital workplace, I think, because a lot of it is too serious sometimes. There's room for injection of humour and personality that isn't always taken. And it tends to, when it's done well, get a lot of attention. So, you know, we laugh at the Joker, he's funny, but he's still serious and a serious sort of threat and a nasty character. He can be both at the same time. And the same is true of a digital workplace. Not threatening digital workplace, but you know what I mean. So the humour adds humanity and sort of personality and emotional engagement to the digital workplace. So here's an example where we injected some humour into this video. Sorry. The video's not playing, it doesn't matter really, it's a video, it's an animation, where some senior leaders kind of recorded their own voices talking about a kind of new initiative to reinvigorate interest in their brand values. They were like launching a competition, and they took the mick out of themselves. They kind of parodied themselves for fun, and it attracted a lot of attention and a lot of interest. And actually, the campaign, as a result, reached 100% of the audience. So everyone saw some part of this campaign, and 80% of people actually nominated colleagues as part of the competition. So there's 80% engagement, which is really a really good result. And I don't think, this is how it's launched. So on the day of the launch of the campaign, if you came to the intranet homepage, I'll just do it again. If you came to the intranet homepage, this is what you saw out of the blue. So kind of adding animation as well, and interest, and really kind of making it clear to people that it was all happening. So that can be fun. Next movie. Okay, so this is a bit more of an obscure one. Anyone know this one?
Mannequin.
What's that, sorry?
Mannequin.
Mannequin, exactly, yes. A slightly odd movie from the 80s, but a bit of a cult classic, where this guy here basically is a window dresser in a big department store in New York. So he, all night, kind of puts together these elaborate window displays, and strangely enough, one of the mannequins comes to life, and only he can see her, and she helps him to create these window displays, and they end up falling in love and so on. She's played by Kim Cattrall from Sex and the City, and it's probably about her first big movie role. And it's sort of funny to imagine her going back to her family and saying, yeah, I got my first role in a Hollywood movie. And they say, oh yeah, great, what's the role? So it's a mannequin. I guess, at least you didn't have to worry about being acting a bit wooden. So, but the thing is, what's the connection here? Okay, where am I going with this? The digital workplace and the intranet, people often talk about having landing pages that are like shop windows. But I say, no, they shouldn't be like shop windows at all, because shop windows, they look like this, where it's all arty-farty and it tells you nothing about what you can expect when you go inside. Or they're like this, complete sensory overload. And yeah, too many intranets look like this, by the way. No, so it's not shop windows, that's not the right analogy. What you really want is store directories. So this is what you actually see when you go in the store, and there's these kind of billboards that lay out what's in the store, what to expect, where to find it, direct you so that you quickly find your way to what you're looking for. And this is a kind of incredibly important analogy for digital workplace and intranets. It results in pages that may look a bit bland. If you've got your graphic design head on, you're thinking, oh, it'd be great to have a bit of photography or whatever. But actually, when you do usability testing with these kinds of interfaces, they're just fantastic. They're just like, everybody gets them, everybody easily finds the information, they don't get confused by them at all. They're just like, there's magic. And here's another example, which is like a task-based navigation as well. They also remove all the kind of weird brand names that people give to things and just give plain language descriptions of tasks and categories. So, next movie, anyone know this one? Wall Street, yes, that's right, yes. So this is Gordon Gekko. Okay. This is Gordon Gekko, anyway. He's basically giving a speech at Teldar Paper to all the stockholders there. And he famously says in this speech that greed is good, greed is right, greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit. Now, if you think you're going to deliver a kind of delightful user experience with a meagre budget, you need to think again. You need to be greedy, like Gordon Gekko. You need to make sure that you're getting as much investment for all the things you need to do as possible. You need to do your user research really well. Have to make sure you're Columbo, get all the information you need to paint a very clear picture around things like, okay, who does what processes, how long they take, how much time is wasted, put a number on it, compare that with how long it takes after you've done some testing with some prototypes, compared to make a very clear return on investment case to get more and more budget, more investment. But also, don't think of it as just one budget. I mean, every function or department in the organisation has a stake in a delightful digital workplace, so they should all cough up some cash to make it a delightful user experience. So you should go around and make sure that you're getting more than one budget to work with. One customer that we work with in the property market in the UK, we designed and built them a digital workplace that is oriented completely around their core business processes. And our main contact there is a master at getting budget for continuous improvement and evolution of that product, of that digital workplace. So just to give you an example, when the first project was delivered, he didn't just sort of say, right, yeah, job well done. He went straight into a board meeting and said, we used to need 3 people to manage 30 property deals a month, now we only need 1. Imagine what we can do with other parts of the business if you give me some cash, basically. And he was very successful in getting that investment from different parts of the business. Okay, so one more movie here. Anyone know this one? Gone in 60 Seconds, that's right, yes. So this is Nicolas Cage as Randall Raines, who's a master car thief. And he has a motto or rule, you've got to be gone in 60 seconds. Which is to say, if you're planning to steal a car, you need to make sure you're going to be able to get away in 60 seconds, otherwise you risk being caught. Now, your users are not going to give you 60 seconds. It's more like 6, max 10. And of course, I'm talking about page load times. Speed is incredibly important in the user experience. E-commerce companies know that the faster pages load, the more money they make, the more sales they make. There's a direct link there. And your users are not going to put up with poor performance. The problem is that you need to kind of get to the bottom of what actually is causing the poor performance, because it can be a multitude of things. There's computer performance, local network bandwidth, internet bandwidth, consumption ratio, server performance, server bandwidth, server location, apps running on the server, calls to other services, efficiency of coding, and so on. It's a bit exhausting, really, the list. So you need to lean on your technical people and help them and get them to help you to identify where actually is the root cause of the problem. Sometimes it can be a combination of these things, but sometimes it's just one. And then, only then, can you actually work out what the right solution is to fix this problem. And it is very important that you fix it. So to give you an example from a customer we worked with, they had a digital workplace built, and we had some issues with users in China having poor performance, slow page loading. It was actually down to basically the location of the server and the fact that there was a lot of latency between their desktops and where it was all being served from, which was in the UK. So we couldn't do anything about the infrastructure in this case, that was out of our control. But what we did do was make some changes to the way the site worked to dramatically improve page load times. And that included things like delivering branding and sort of assets and imagery and that sort of thing from local servers, from what's called a content delivery network. So that sped things up. That was one part of the solution. But also, web parts on the page that were normally dynamic real-time, we made sort of semi-dynamic. So they updated less often, and they were actually served as static content, again, dramatically improving the page load times, reducing the queries. So you can do a bit of kind of smoke and mirrors work sometimes to drastically improve performance. Admittedly, the non-real-time nature of it does impinge on user experience slightly, but the net gain of the improved speed is a win. I think I've got a bit more time. How am I doing with time? Yeah. So, got a bonus one. Anyone know this movie? Total Recall, yes. So this is where Arnold Schwarzenegger goes to Mars after having a dream about going to Mars. I can't quite remember the plot, it's a bit weird. But so one of his experiences when he arrives in Mars is he goes for a ride in what's called a Johnny cab, which is basically a driverless taxi. It's a bit weird because they've created this driverless taxi, but they take up half of the interior cabin space, putting up this spooky dummy in the front that looks like a human driver. It's a bit of an odd decision. But anyway, so what does it tell us about the digital workplace? Well, it's kind of a vision of the future in some ways, but a bit of a weird one. We kind of have driverless cars. The technology is there. They're kind of there, but they're not there because of politics and safety issues, that sort of thing. Mars colonisation, we're doing less well on that front, I guess. But then there's AI, there's got artificial intelligence, and as Yes was talking about earlier, there's been big advancements here, lots of progress made in the last few years, and we're even starting to see it in the digital workplace. One key example of that, of course, is chatbots, and you've probably heard about chatbots over the last year or so at least. And this is where you interact with an AI bot in order to get information from the digital workplace or take an action like book a meeting room or whatever it is, and you do it through sort of just text instructions or questions, natural language. We've rolled out for a customer, and now it's quite early days with this one. It's still a bit like, to be honest, glorified search at the moment. But the great thing about bots are that they actually learn and improve over time the more they're used, and you can also continually train them, so they will get better and better and better. And what's I think really interesting though about chatbots particularly is the impact they will have on mobile users and the user experience on mobile, because you can open them up to be accessed or interacted with via just your standard messaging app on your phone. So you're kind of removing a whole barrier in terms of learning a kind of UI. You're dealing with the user experience that you're so used to dealing with, and it's having constant money poured into it by the major players like Apple and sort of Google and so on, Samsung and so on, constantly evolving the experience, making it as simple as possible, and you're benefiting from that because your bot's using it too. So I think that's really interesting for the future. So just a reminder though, let's go back to what we were talking about in terms of deep delight. Remember that you can achieve some surface delight in certain little locations by adding some icing on the cake and bells and whistles. But if you want true, deep, delightful user experiences, then you need to remember the hierarchy of needs and make sure that you build up every level and that you are meeting all user needs across the business as far as possible. And remember, of course, as well, be greedy, be Gordon Gecko. This stuff takes money, so don't be shy. Okay, so thank you very much. Any questions? Any questions, mate? Oh, yes.
You mentioned the load time of the page,
yes.
And I guess all of us using Office 365 cloud knows that this is a big issue. Did you do something? Do we have any advice on that to improve?
Yeah, so sometimes that can be one of the issues. I mean, you'll more often find that there's some of those other ones that you can sort of correct for. It's not something that we have direct control over, of course, but I know that Microsoft are constantly looking at that and improving things, and that is evolving. So I think that's as best you can do. You can just look at the other areas that you can do something about and make changes there to improve things. Anyone else? Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much. Cheers.